The research vessel starward drifted silently through the empty void of space. Its white hull gleamed under the light of distant stars as it approached the unexplored planet designated XC2187. The planet hung like a blue-green jewel against the black canvas of space. Its surface mostly covered by dense forests and shallow oceans. On the ship's observation deck, Natalie Wood stared at the data scrolling across her screen. Her brow furrowed as she noticed unusual patterns in the energy readings from the planet's surface. "Captain, you need to see this," she called. Not taking her eyes off the screen, Captain Alan Murphy moved across the bridge with practiced ease despite the low gravity. His weathered face showed the experience of 20 years exploring the farthest reaches of the Orion Arm. "What have you found, Chief Woods?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder. "These energy patterns, sir, they're moving." Natalie pointed to a series of blips on the screen, and they're moving fast. Too fast and too regular to be natural weather patterns or geological activity. Alan studied the screen, his gray eyes narrowing. "Could be animal migration." "No animal we've ever documented moves with this kind of precision," Natalie replied. "And look at the speed calculations. Whatever this is, it's covering nearly 50 miles per hour through dense forest." From across the bridge, Security Officer Frank Collins looked up from his station. "Captain, I strongly advise against sending anyone to the surface until we have more information. This planet isn't in our mission parameters anyway." Alan stroked his chin thoughtfully. "When was the last time we found energy signatures like this, Frank? This could be first contact with a new intelligent species. Or it could be something that wants to eat us," Frank muttered. After several minutes of deliberation, Alan made his decision. "Prepare a reconnaissance team. Small group, minimal equipment. I want to know what's down there." 4 hours later, Natalie found herself sitting in the small scout shuttle alongside 3 other crew members. Peter Hayes, the ship's xenobiologist, checked his equipment with practiced hands. His enthusiasm was evident in his quick movements and bright eyes. "This is incredible," he said, looking out the viewport as they descended toward the planet's surface. "The preliminary scans show at least 3 completely unique ecosystems in just the landing zone alone." Across from him sat Maria Diaz, security specialist. Unlike Peter, she seemed tense, her hand never straying far from her sidearm. Her dark eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. "Let's remember we're here to observe, not make friends," she said firmly. John Kelly, communications expert, finished calibrating his equipment. "All channels open. We'll maintain constant contact with the starward." As their shuttle broke through the cloud layer, the true scale of the forest below became apparent. Massive trees stretched hundreds of feet into the air, their canopies forming an almost unbroken sea of deep green. The shuttle's computer identified a small clearing suitable for landing. "Taking us down," John announced, his hands moving confidently. Over the controls, the shuttle settled onto the mossy ground with a soft thud. Immediately, the team's sensors began picking up sounds from the surrounding forest: clicks, whistles, and low rumbling noises unlike anything in their database. "Air composition is within human tolerance," Peter announced, checking his instruments. "Gravity slightly lower than Earth standard. Temperature is a comfortable 72 degrees. Maria was the first to step outside, weapon ready as she scanned the tree line. "Clear for now," she called back. The team set up their base camp efficiently, deploying sensors and a wide perimeter around the shuttle. As Natalie calibrated the main scanner, she felt a strange sensation like she was being watched. She looked up at the dense forest canopy but saw nothing unusual among the strange blue-tinged leaves. "Anyone else feel that?" she asked quietly. Peter looked up from his specimen collection. "Feel what?" "Nothing," Natalie replied, shaking her head. "Must be first-day jitters." As the planet's sun began to set, casting long purple shadows through the trees, the team gathered around their camp. John's audio equipment suddenly picked up a series of vocalizations from deep in the forest. "Listen to this," he said, increasing the volume. The sound that came through was unlike anything they had heard before, a low, rhythmic clicking followed by what could only be described as a melodic wail. Is that communication? Natalie wondered aloud. Or it could be a hunting call, Maria added grimly. Peter was transfixed. Whatever it is, it's complex. There's pattern and repetition. I'm recording everything. That night, they established a watch rotation. Maria took first watch while the others attempted to sleep in the shuttle. Natalie found rest impossible as the strange sounds from the forest grew louder and more varied as darkness fell completely. 2 hours into her restless attempt at sleep, Natalie was jolted awake by a sudden silence. The forest, which had been alive with sounds, went completely quiet. She sat up, heart pounding. "Maria?" she called out. No answer came. Natalie quickly woke John and Peter. "Something's wrong. Maria isn't responding." The three of them exited the shuttle, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Maria's post at the edge of the camp was empty. Her chair was overturned, and her communication device lay broken on the ground. "Maria!" Peter called out, his voice echoing through the silent forest. John found it first, a trail of disturbed moss and soil leading away from the camp. Alongside it were drag marks and what appeared to be footprints, but unlike any they had seen before. These were enormous, with strange spacing and depth that suggested something of incredible weight. More disturbing was what they found next, Maria's weapon, bent and partially dissolved as if it had been dipped in powerful acid. Next to it was a small pool of dark liquid that Peter confirmed was human blood. "We need to call the ship," John said, his voice shaking slightly. "Whatever took Maria is probably still close by," Natalie finished for him. She looked out into the darkness of the alien forest, suddenly aware of how vulnerable they were. The feeling of being watched had returned, stronger than before. As they backed toward the shuttle, Natalie's scanner picked up the energy signature again, the same pattern they had detected from orbit. But this time, it wasn't miles away. It was moving directly toward them. In the darkness beyond their flashlight beams, something large shifted among the trees. The forest floor trembled slightly with each movement. A soft clicking sound similar to what they had recorded earlier, but much closer and deeper, echoed around them. "Inside, now," Natalie ordered. As they rushed toward the shuttle, John looked back over his shoulder. His flashlight beam caught something for just a moment, a glimpse of a massive form moving with impossible speed and grace for its size. Its skin seemed to bend the light around it, making it difficult to focus on. The last thing John saw before they sealed the shuttle door was what looked like multiple limbs, unfurling from the creature's body, and a series of eyes that reflected their flashlight beams back like mirrors. The hunt had begun. The morning light filtered through the blue-tinged leaves as Natalie, Peter, and John emerged cautiously from the shuttle. They had spent a sleepless night inside, listening to strange sounds circling their camp. Now, in the light of day, they began their search for Maria. "The drag marks lead this way," Peter said, pointing toward a path of broken vegetation and disturbed soil. He knelt down, examining something on the ground. "Look at this." Natalie crouched beside him. A clear liquid substance coated some of the leaves. When Peter carefully touched it with a collection tool, the leaf began to dissolve. "Some kind of digestive enzyme," Peter explained, his voice tense. "Whatever took Maria produces this stuff." John kept his weapon ready as they followed the trail deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker here, their massive trunks creating a maze of shadows and filtered light. The silence was unnerving, no calls from native wildlife, no rustling in the underbrush. "The creature must be a local apex predator," Peter theorized as they walked. "The other animals know to stay quiet when it's hunting." "But what kind of predator hunts humans?" John asked. "We've never been to this planet before." "Maybe it doesn't care what it hunts," Natalie replied quietly. They found pieces of Maria's uniform along the way, torn and partially dissolved. Each discovery made their hearts sink further, but they pressed on, determined to find their teammate. Meanwhile, aboard the Starward, data analyst Greg Porter was growing concerned by the lack of communication from the ground team. Captain Murphy had ordered him to review historical records from nearby sectors while they waited for an update. "Captain, I think I found something," Greg called out. 3 other expeditions disappeared in sectors near this planet. No distress calls, no debris fields, just ... on. Alan frowned, looking at the star map Greg had pulled up. Why wasn't this flagged before we approached? The disappearances were classified under different causes, Greg explained. But when you look at the pattern and timeline, he gestured to the display, which showed the incidents forming a clear line through space, ending at their current location. Alan's face hardened with decision. Prepare a rescue shuttle. I want a fully armed team ready in 20 minutes. Back on the planet's surface, the search party had been walking for hours when they discovered a clearing unlike any they had seen before. The trees here were bent and broken, forming a crude, dome-like structure. The ground was littered with bones, some clearly not human, but others disturbingly familiar in shape. It's a lair, Peter whispered, his scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming his fear. In the center of the clearing, they found Maria. She was alive but severely wounded, her body partially wrapped in a strange, fibrous material. Blood-soaked through her torn uniform, but her eyes fluttered open when Natalie touched her face. It's studying us, Maria managed to say, her voice barely audible. It learns ... from what it hunts. As they worked to free her, John noticed other bundles around the clearing. Some contained the remains of creatures they couldn't identify, 6-limbed beings, creatures with exoskeletons, and other alien forms in various states of preservation. We need to get her back to the ship, Natalie said, helping Peter lift Maria. John, call for extraction. John raised his communicator, but before he could send the message, a shadow fell across the clearing. The team froze in place as a massive form descended from the canopy above. The Void Walker revealed itself fully for the first time. It stood nearly 9 feet tall, its body semi-translucent with a skin that seemed to shift and bend light around it like a living camouflage. Multiple limbs extended from its torso, some ending in razor-sharp appendages, others in what appeared to be specialized sensory organs. Its head housed a cluster of reflective eyes that moved independently of each other, scanning the humans from different angles simultaneously. A mouth filled with translucent teeth opened in what almost seemed like curiosity. Nobody move, Peter breathed, his scientific mind still working despite his terror. It tracks by movement. But the creature had already seen them. With frightening intelligence in its gaze, it began to move around the clearing, cutting off their path back to the shuttle. It moved with impossible grace for its size, each step calculated and precise. It's hurting us, Natalie realized. It's done this before. The creature suddenly lunged toward them with blinding speed. Peter pushed Natalie and John away, shouting, "Run! Take Maria!" "I'll hold it off." Before they could protest, Peter fired his weapon directly at the creature. The energy blast struck the Void Walker, causing it to recoil momentarily. Its skin bubbled where the blast hit, but the wound began healing almost immediately. Natalie and John lifted Maria between them and ran in the opposite direction, hearing Peter's continued fire behind them. The sounds of struggle lasted only moments before being replaced by an eerie silence. They didn't look back. The trek back to the shuttle was a blur of terror and exhaustion. Maria drifted in and out of consciousness as they carried her through the dense forest, guided only by their handheld navigator. When they finally reached the clearing where they had landed, their relief was short-lived. The shuttle was there, but its hatch was torn open, the interior shredded as if something had been searching inside. "It knew we would come back here," John said, his voice hollow. A distant sound made them turn, the welcome roar of engines. As a second shuttle broke through the atmosphere, the rescue team from the starward had arrived. "We need to signal them," Natalie said, pulling out a flare from her emergency kit. As the rescue shuttle began its descent, Natalie fired the flare high above the trees. The bright light streaked upward, momentarily illuminating the clearing. In that brief flash they saw it of the Void Walker, perched in the trees at the edge of the clearing, watching them with its multiple eyes. Something dark dripped from its claws. The rescue shuttle landed, and armed crew members rushed out to secure the area. Captain Murphy himself led the team, helping get the wounded Maria aboard. Where are the others? He asked as they prepared for emergency takeoff. Gone, Natalie said simply, her eyes still fixed on the tree line where she had seen the creature. But it's still out there. As the shuttle lifted off, John looked out the viewport. At least we're safe now, but Natalie wasn't so sure. She had seen the intelligence in the creature's eyes, the calculated way it had hunted them. This wasn't just an animal acting on instinct. It was something more. The shuttle docked with the starward, and the medical team rushed Maria to the infirmary. Captain Murphy ordered immediate departure from the planet's orbit, pushing the engines to maximum as soon as everyone was aboard. As the ship began to pull away, the sensors operator called out in alarm. Captain! Something's attached itself to the hull near the cargo bay. A chill ran down Natalie's spine as the ship's internal alarms began to sound. The apex hunter had followed them home. Chaos erupted aboard the starward as emergency lights flashed red throughout the corridors. Captain Murphy rushed to the bridge, his face grim as he barked orders to his crew. Seal all internal doors. Full security teams to the cargo bay. He commanded, his voice steady despite the panic spreading through the ship. Natalie followed him to the bridge, her legs still weak from their escape on the planet. Captain, this creature isn't like anything we've encountered before. Conventional. Weapons barely slowed it down. The ship shuddered violently. On the main screen, interior cameras showed the cargo bay doors being wrenched open from the inside. The feed went dead seconds later. It's in, Natalie whispered. Murphy activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention all crew, this is not a drill. We have a hostile entity aboard. Arm yourselves and travel in groups. Avoid Deck C and the cargo bay area. In the medical bay, Maria lay unconscious as doctors worked to stabilize her condition. John stood guard at the door, weapon ready, jumping at every sound from the corridor outside. Communications are down, reported the young officer at the console. We can't send a distress call. Murphy turned to Natalie. You've seen this thing. What are we dealing with? Before she could answer, screams echoed through the ship's intercom. System, followed by the sound of tearing metal, then silence. It's hunting us, Natalie said simply. And it's learning as it goes. In the damaged communications room, the automated emergency beacon activated, sending out a simple distress signal into the vastness of space. It was their only hope now. 12 light-years away, the Earth Alliance military vessel Horizon picked up the faint signal. The ship was returning from a border patrol mission, its crew eager to get home. Captain Winters, we're receiving a distress beacon, the communications officer reported. It's from a research vessel, the Starward. Captain Lisa Winters, a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles, studied the signal data. Any details on the nature of their emergency? No, ma'am. Just an automated beacon. Lisa considered for a moment. Change course, maximum speed. Research vessels don't trigger emergency beacons for minor problems. Among the Horizon's crew was Sergeant Ben Cooper, a combat specialist with a reputation for unorthodox tactics. When he heard about the rescue mission, he volunteered immediately. I've worked with research teams before, he told Captain Winters. They sometimes get in over their heads. The Horizon's military scientist, Dr. Eric Mitchell, accessed the database for information about the Starward's mission. What he found troubled him deeply. Captain, I've found something in the classified archives, he said, showing Lisa his tablet. That sector has a history of disappearances. There are reports of an entity some local species call the Void Walker. Lisa frowned. What kind of entity? A predator, Eric replied grimly, supposedly responsible for wiping out entire colonies and research teams. Most officials dismissed it as spacer myths, but there's enough missing ships to make me wonder. As the Horizon approached the Starward's last known coordinates, Ben prepared the rescue team. 6 soldiers in full combat gear checked their weapons and equipment under his watchful eye. We go in fast, find survivors, and get out faster, he instructed. No heroes, no stragglers. The Horizon finally reached the Starward, finding the research vessel drifting with minimal power. Most external lights were dead, and there was visible damage to the hull. Life signs? Captain Winters asked. Scattered readings, ma'am. Maybe a dozen survivors hiding throughout the ship. After several attempts, they established minimal communication with the Starward's bridge. Natalie's face appeared on the screen, pale and drawn. This is Chief Science Officer Woods of the Starward, she said, her voice shaking. We have a hostile entity aboard. Captain Murphy is dead. It's hunting us one by one. We're sending a rescue team, Lisa assured her. Hold tight. Natalie shook her head frantically. No, you don't understand this thing. It adapts. Weapons don't stop it for long. It learns from every encounter. Ben stepped forward. What's its hunting pattern? Does it have any weaknesses? It tracks by heat and movement, Natalie explained. It's incredibly fast and strong. Its skin can resist energy weapons and it heals quickly. Ben nodded, his mind already working. We're coming in. Try to gather survivors near the main airlock. The rescue team boarded the Starward through a secondary airlock, moving in tight formation through the darkened corridors. Ben noticed immediately that the temperature aboard the ship was unusually warm. Life support malfunction? He asked softly. No, came Natalie's voice through their coms. It broke into the environmental controls. We think it prefers warm climates for hunting. Ben filed this information away as they proceeded deeper into the ship. The walls were marked with long, deep gouges and a clear, sticky substance that seemed to dissolve the metal slightly where it touched. They found their first survivor hiding in a maintenance shaft, a young engineer named Sam who hadn't slept. In days, his eyes were wide with terror. It knows you're here, he whispered. It can sense new prey. As they moved toward the gathering point, Ben began to notice patterns in the damage throughout the ship. The creature wasn't just randomly destroying things. It was strategically cutting off escape routes and creating new paths for itself. This isn't mindless, he said quietly. It's thinking ahead. In the medical bay, they found John guarding the still unconscious Maria. 4 other crew members had joined them, armed with makeshift weapons. We need to move now, Ben ordered, back to the airlock in tight formation. As they made their way through the ship's winding corridors, Ben heard a faint sound, a clicking noise coming from somewhere above them. He signaled for everyone to freeze. In the ceiling vent above them, something large shifted. A drop of clear liquid fell to the floor, immediately beginning to eat through the metal deck. Move! Ben shouted. The creature burst through the ceiling in an explosion of twisted metal. It landed in the middle of their group, immediately lashing out with its sharp limbs. 2 of Ben's soldiers went down before they could even fire. In the chaos that followed, Ben noticed something critical. When they fired at the creature, it recoiled not from pain but from the sound. The high-pitched whine of the energy weapons seemed to disorient it momentarily. Keep firing, he ordered. Continuous bursts. The barrage of weapon fire created enough noise to push the creature back, giving them a chance to retreat. As they ran, Ben saw the creature hesitate when they passed through a section where the environmental controls were damaged, creating a pocket of much cooler air. They made it to the airlock with Natalie, John, Maria on a stretcher, and 5 other survivors. 2 more of Ben's team had been lost in the retreat. As the airlock door closed behind them, they saw the creature watching from the end of the corridor. Its multiple eyes seemed to study them with calculated intelligence. For a moment, Ben locked eyes with it, and a chill ran down his spine. This wasn't just a predator, it was learning from them. The rescue shuttle detached from the Starward and returned to the horizon. As they entered the medical bay, alarms began to sound throughout the military vessel. What's happening? Captain Winters demanded. The security officer's voice was tight with fear. Something's breached the hull near the shuttle bay. It followed us aboard. Ben turned to Natalie, his face set with determination. I saw it hesitate. In the cold. Tell me everything you know about this creature's biology. The hunt was now aboard the horizon, but for the first time, Ben had seen a weakness in the apex predator. Now he just needed to exploit it before the creature learned to adapt once again. The lights on the horizon flickered as emergency protocols activated throughout the ship. Captain Winters ordered all non-essential personnel to secure quarters while security teams moved to contain the threat, Ben found himself alone in the engineering section after being separated from the others during the initial chaos. The creature had attacked suddenly, forcing everyone to scatter. Now, the ship's internal sensors showed it moving methodically through the decks. Hunting the crew one by one, Ben took a deep breath and focused. Unlike the others, he wasn't running blindly. He was watching, learning. Just as the creature learned from its prey, he accessed a nearby terminal, bringing up the ship's internal sensor grid. The Horizon was a military vessel with much more sophisticated tracking systems than the research ship Starward had possessed. Ben could see heat signatures moving throughout the vessel, crew members hiding or moving in groups, and one larger, faster-moving signature that had to be the Void Walker. "It's tracking by heat," Ben muttered to himself, remembering how the creature had hesitated in the colder section of the Starward. He studied the movement patterns carefully. The creature wasn't just chasing the nearest heat source, it was prioritizing, choosing specific targets, perhaps sensing which prey would be easier to catch. Ben tapped his communication device. "Dr. Mitchell, are you there?" After a moment of static, Eric's voice came through. "I'm here." "In the lab with Natalie Woods, the creature hasn't found us yet." "I need you to analyze something," Ben said. "The biological samples Natalie's team collected from the planet. Do you have access to them?" "Yes, they brought sample cases. What are we looking for?" "Anything about its cellular structure, especially how it responds to temperature changes." While Eric and Natalie worked in the lab, Ben continued to study the creature's movements. It was systematic, clearing one section of the ship before moving to the next. It was also learning the layout of the horizon with frightening speed. Ben noticed something else. The creature sometimes lost track of crew members who remained completely still. When they didn't move, their heat signatures were harder for it to distinguish from the background temperature of the ship. His communication device crackled again. "Ben, it's Natalie. We've analyzed the samples. This creature evolved on a world with extreme temperature variations. That's why it prefers the warmer sections of the ship," Ben reasoned. "More than that," Eric added. "Its cellular structure is remarkable. The cells can rapidly reshape and heal, which is why weapons don't stop it for long. But that same adaptability has a weakness. It can't handle sudden temperature changes," Natalie explained, "especially extreme cold. The cells need time to adapt, and if the temperature drops too quickly, they can't adjust fast enough." Ben finished the thought. "What about the ship's coolant systems? Could we use those?" "The primary coolant for the engines is liquid nitrogen," Eric confirmed. "It's kept at nearly negative 200 degrees Celsius." Ben's mind raced with possibilities. "I need to get to environmental controls. Can you guide me there without crossing the creature's path?" Using the sensor grid, Natalie directed Ben through the ship's maintenance tunnels, avoiding the sections where the Void Walker was hunting. As he crawled through the narrow spaces, he heard distant screams and the sound of metal tearing as the creature continued its rampage. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, the remaining survivors had gathered in the cryogenics lab. John had brought the still recovering Maria there along with several other crew members from both ships. "Why are we hiding here?" one of the Horizon's crew asked. "We should be trying to reach the escape pods." "The temperature," John explained, remembering what he had heard Ben discussing. "It's colder in here than anywhere else on the ship. I think the creature doesn't like the cold." The creature seemed to sense this strategy. It stalked the corridors outside the cryogenics lab but didn't immediately attack, as if evaluating this new situation. The survivors watched nervously on the security monitors as it circled their position. Ben finally reached the environmental control room. He quickly assessed the systems, formulating a plan. "Natalie, I need you to create a ship-wide alert telling all survivors to head to the cryogenics lab on Deck B," he said through his communicator. "And I need Captain Winters to authorize emergency coolant purge protocols. What are you planning?" Captain Winters' voice came through the channel. "A trap," Ben replied simply. "This thing hunts like a predator, and all predators follow certain patterns. I'm going to use those patterns against it." With Captain Winter's authorization, Ben began rerouting the ship's coolant systems. He created a path of increasing warmth through specific corridors of the ship, all leading to a single intersection outside the cryogenics lab. Predators are drawn to the path of least resistance and the promise of easy prey, Ben explained as he worked. I'm giving it exactly what it wants until it walks right into our trap. In the cryogenics lab, the survivors watched the security feeds as Ben set his plan in motion. First, he raised the temperature in selected corridors, creating a warm path through the ship. Then he triggered minor vibrations along that route, simulating the movement of multiple potential prey. The creature responded immediately. It began following the heat trail, moving exactly as Ben had predicted. Its multiple limbs carried it swiftly through the ship, drawn by the promise of warmth and movement. It's working, Natalie whispered, watching the monster approach their position. Ben moved quickly to his final position near the intersection. He had rigged the emergency coolant lines to create a controlled release that would flood the intersection with liquid nitrogen when triggered. Everyone stay in the cryogenics lab, he ordered through the communication system. No matter what you hear, do not open those doors until I give the all-clear. The creature reached the final corridor. It paused momentarily, its sensory organs scanning ahead. Ben held his breath, hoping it hadn't detected his trap. After a moment, the Void Walker continued forward, drawn by the warmth and the promise of prey behind the cryogenics lab doors. As it reached the intersection, Ben stepped out from his hiding place. The creature immediately turned toward him, its multiple eyes focusing on this new threat. Ben stood perfectly still, meeting its gaze. The Void Walker tilted its head in what almost seemed like curiosity. It had encountered many prey species across many worlds, but few had ever stood there. Ground like this. Few had ever studied it as it studied them. For a brief moment, predator and prey regarded each other with mutual recognition, two hunters from different worlds, both apex in their own domains. Then Ben smiled. You're not the only one who can adapt. He activated the emergency release. Coolant pipes burst open from all directions, flooding the intersection with liquid nitrogen. The sudden blast of extreme cold hit the creature with such speed that its adaptive biology had no time to respond. The Void Walker let out a shriek unlike anything Ben had heard before, a sound of confusion and shock rather than pain. It tried to move, to flee from the cold. But the temperature was dropping too rapidly. Ben retreated to safety as the coolant continued to pour into the corridor. On the security monitor, he watched as the creature's movements became slower, its limbs stiffening as the extreme cold overwhelmed its ability to adapt. Within seconds, the Void Walker stood completely still, its semi-transparent body beginning to crystallize from the outside in. The apex hunter that had roamed across worlds, that had hunted countless species, that had seemed unstoppable in its predatory perfection, had finally met something it couldn't overcome, a human who understood the nature of the hunt better than it did. The emergency alarms finally went silent as Captain Winters surveyed the damage to her ship. The Horizon had survived, though at a cost. 12 crew members lost, sections of the ship torn apart, and systems damaged beyond immediate repair. But the greater threat had been contained. Ben stood at the observation window, looking at what remained of the Void Walker. The creature was frozen solid, its crystallized form glittering under the harsh lights of the quarantine chamber. A team of technicians in thermal suits had carefully moved it from the corridor where Ben's trap had worked, keeping it constantly exposed to extreme cold. Remarkable, Dr. Mitchell said, joining Ben at the window. Its cellular structure is completely suspended. Not dead, technically speaking, just ... Natalie approached from the other side, her face showing a mixture of scientific curiosity and lingering fear. So it could revive if it warmed up? Theoretically, Eric nodded, but we're not going to let that happen. Captain Winters called a meeting of all surviving senior personnel to decide what to do next. They gathered in the conference room, many still showing signs of their ordeal, bandages, haunted expressions, and nervous glances at the shadows. First, I want to commend Sergeant Cooper, Lisa began, nodding toward Ben. His quick thinking saved what was left of both our crews. Ben shook his head modestly. I just observed what it was doing. The creature hunts by patterns, like any predator. Once I understood those patterns, creating a counter-strategy was straightforward. Nothing straightforward about it, John commented from across the table. We've been running from that thing for days, and you stopped it in hours? Lisa continued, now we need to decide what to do with it. Alliance protocol for unknown biological threats is clear, complete destruction. Natalie leaned forward. Captain, with all due respect, we're talking about an entirely new life form. Its adaptive capabilities could revolutionize medicine, materials science. It killed over 20 people, one of the Horizon's officers countered. So do predators on Earth when humans invade their territory, Natalie argued. It was doing what evolution designed it to do, Hunt. Ben had remained quiet during the debate, but now he spoke. There's something else to consider. The collection of prey in its lair on the planet, they weren't just local species. Some appeared to be from other worlds. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You think there are more of these things out there? Lisa asked. Ben nodded slowly. The pattern of disappearances Greg Porter found suggests this creature has been traveling between worlds for a long time. That level of intelligence, combined with its predatory nature, I doubt it's the only one of its kind. All the more reason to study it, Natalie insisted. If we're going to encounter more of these Voidwalkers, we need to understand them. After hours of debate, Captain Winters made her decision. The creature would be transported to a secure Alliance research facility where it would be kept in permanent cryogenic suspension while being studied under the strictest containment protocols. The journey back to Alliance space was tense. The Horizon limped along at reduced speed, its damaged engines struggling to maintain power. In the medical bay, Maria finally regained full consciousness. Ben visited her as she was beginning her physical therapy. I hear you're the one who figured out how to stop it, she said when he entered the room. Ben smiled. Just applied some old hunting wisdom my grandfather taught me. Understand your prey, respect its abilities, and find the pattern. Maria's expression grew serious. I was awake. When it had me in its lair, I could feel it studying me, testing how my muscles worked, how my body responded to pain. It wasn't just hunting for food, it was learning. That's what makes it so dangerous, Ben agreed, and potentially so valuable to understand. On the bridge, Lisa received a transmission from Alliance Command. Their request for a specialized containment facility had been approved. Construction would begin immediately at a remote outpost far from populated systems. They're taking this seriously, she told Natalie, who had joined her on the bridge. As they should, Natalie replied. We're lucky Ben saw the pattern when he did. A few more hours and there might not have been anyone left to rescue. 2 weeks later, the Horizon reached the Alliance research outpost. A team of scientists and security personnel waited as the frozen Void Walker was transferred to its permanent home. A specially designed chamber kept at a constant negative 200 degrees. Ben watched from an observation deck as the container was moved into place. Natalie joined him, now wearing the uniform of the research team that would be studying the creature. They've offered me a position here, she explained. To lead the research into its biology. They made a good choice, Ben replied. You understand it better than most. Natalie turned to him. They've asked for you too, as a security consultant. They say your insights into its hunting behavior could be crucial for developing protocols if we encounter more of them. Ben considered this for a moment. I never planned on being an expert in alien predators. Few of us plan our paths that. Clearly, Natalie said with a small smile. Sometimes life has other ideas. In the containment chamber below, technicians finished securing the frozen Voidwalker. Under the blue lights of the cryogenic field, its crystallized form looked almost beautiful. Deadly perfection suspended in time. Ben made his decision. I'll stay. At least until you have proper security measures in place. Later that evening, Ben sat alone in his new quarters, reviewing the data they had collected on the creature. Its journey across worlds, the evidence of its hunts, the remains in its lair, all pointed to a species that had evolved to become the perfect predator, yet even perfection had its limits. The creature had never encountered a prey species that studied it as it studied others. It had never expected to be understood so completely that its own hunting patterns would become a trap. On the wall screen, Ben pulled up the security feed from the containment chamber. The frozen Voidwalker stood there, a monument to both the dangers and wonders that waited among the stars. Its many eyes, though unmoving, seemed to stare back at him across the gulf of species and evolution. 3 months later, a mining colony on the outer rim reported strange disappearances. Crew members vanishing without trace, equipment found dissolved by unknown substances, and glimpses of something that moved too quickly to be seen clearly. As the Alliance ship dispatched to investigate prepared for departure, Ben Cooper checked his equipment one last time. The specialized thermal weapons had been his design, based on what they had learned from the captured Voidwalker. Natalie joined him in the shuttle bay. "You think it's another one?" "The pattern fits," Ben replied simply. As their ship broke orbit and set course for the distant colony, Ben reviewed his notes on predatory behavior. The Voidwalker they had captured had roamed across worlds unchallenged, until it met a human who understood the nature of the hunt. Now that knowledge would be tested against another of its kind. The apex hunter they had frozen was just the beginning. But humanity was ready now, no longer just prey in the cosmic food chain. They had learned, adapted, and evolved, just as the Voidwalker had done across countless worlds. The hunt would continue, but the hunters were now the hunted.